How's it going, YouTube? Dr. C3 here, and we are officially back with the GPBAR. This is season 3 now, and I wanted to come back to YouTube on this front. We already drafted. Some people already played their week 1 matches, but it's more or less a good starting point to come back, especially with the start of 2022 right around the corner. You know, mine as well. This is going to be a 2-part series, or at least a 2-part video, I guess. One part of it is going to be just me going about my team. I did get the first overall pick because I won the pick'ems for the previous season, which was always, you know, a great start. But at the very least, I wanted to make this video to sort of, yeah, I don't know, just get back into YouTube. I'm excited. Got a new place, got a new office. It's a nice space, and I'm just enjoying it, right? This is going to be a casual video, not a lot going on the screen, so if you want to put it on in the background while you're doing stuff, folding laundry, whatever, you know, it might be an hour long, who knows. I tend to ramble. So, yeah, with that said, I think we're just going to get into my team here. Like I said, I had the first overall pick in the draft, so I went with a Pokemon I didn't think I'd ever get to play with again, and that is Tornadus T. Tornadus T by itself is actually ridiculous, right? It could be a bulk up physical hitter. It could be a nasty plot. It could be a nasty plot setup sweeper with things like Hurricane and Focus Blast, and it could be mixed. It could just be support, bulky support with things like Knockoff and, you know, Defog, and I don't believe it gets Tailwind, but I know it gets U-Turn, so that Regenerator pivot is just gonna like keep on stacking. Basically, with 16 teams in the draft, I didn't know where I wanted to go with my draft when it initially started, but I did know if I grabbed Tornadus T, when it came back, you know, 32 picks later, I was going to have a lot of time to figure out like what core I wanted to build off of, what is still the best on the board at the moment, and it didn't really like pigeonhole me into grabbing a Mega too early, or necessarily locking myself into a Fairy Dragon Steel core. Say I got like a bulky Steel type or something, that I had to offset with like a faster Fairy or a faster Dragon. Like, I didn't want to think about that in the moment. I just said, you know what, Torn T, I may never get to draft this again, so mine as well, right? Not much else to say. I know the 121 speed stat is very nice, but overall, with the heavy duty boots, this thing only got better in Generation 8, and I'm super glad I have David Bird on the team. My actual team builder is a little bit off, but the next Pokemon I drafted, since I was on the wheel, I guess this is in tandem, so I'll look at it that way. But it came back to me, and a brilliant idea dawned, and that was Excadrill is still on the board, and so is Infernape. And those two alone are just sort of a nightmare to prep against. Starting with Excadrill, you really don't know what it's going to do each week, just because it could be physical or like really bulky. That HP stat of 110 really does a number for it. If you want to invest in a certain amount of attack or speed creep something and then throw the rest in HP, you instantly become a lot more just bulkier than people anticipate, to say the least, right? So you hit with 230 speed stat, whatever it is, right? Not only are you hitting hard, you're also living the hits that people think that you would initially die to, which is good. The abilities of Mold Breaker set Stealth Rocks up against like Magic Bounce users. I know someone drafted Mega Diancie in the league, so like Excadrill is a really great counter to Mega Diancie, especially if I have the stand up. Like, there's no shot there. Not to mention with the buff to Rapid Spin, not only dealing more damage, making Excadrill scarier, but giving it that +1 without it relying on the sand. So I could technically run Mold Breaker plus Rapid Spin in hopes to get a setup sweet late game if I know I can get the Rapid Spin off against something. So fingers crossed. I've used Excadrill Greetings in the past for several other leagues. I'm very comfortable with this Pokemon, and that was like the main decision behind like grabbing it second overall. I said, you know what, Torn T, Excadrill, they cover the weaknesses really good. I already got that ground type, I got my Rapid Spinner, I got a great Stealth Rocker, so I'm hitting the check marks on the board that Tornadus necessarily didn't give me at first. Plus, it alleviates the defog pressure from Tornadus, so I could just go Rapid Spin Excadrill. You know, it's immune to toxic spikes, so, you know, I think it's quad resist to rocks. If not, it's definitely just resisted to rocks. So really the only thing I have to worry about is like things like spikes and leech seed, but everyone has to worry about those. Next up, we grabbed Rafiki, our shiny Infernape throughout the season. Typically, whenever I have shiny Pokemon on my team, I typically have them in-game. So, yeah, if you see a Pokemon that's shiny in the layout, it's probably because I have it shiny in-game. But, nevertheless, I wanted a good, versatile Swiss Army knife that Tornadus can complement, right? So Tornadus, like I said, can be physical or special. Infernape comes in, it does the exact same thing. It can set up Swords Dance, it can set up Nasty Plot, it can set up Bulk Up, it can set up Calm Mind. It has Slack Off for natural recovery if I wanted to be a little more defensive. It gets Power Up Punch now, which is like a pretty cool thing. I don't know if I'll ever use Power Up Punch, but it's got really great priority in Backing Wave. I don't believe it has Mach Punch. Oh no, it does have Mach Punch. I'm thinking of Lucario, it doesn't have Bullet Punch. But yeah, it's just sort of one of those Pokemon that could really set up and sweep, or it could just take the load off of other Pokemon, right? Infernape gets Stealth Rocks. It's a move that people typically forget that Infernape carries, but like, you round out the lineup in team prep and you realize, oh my god, I don't have a Stealth Rocker, and then you know you have Infernape. Typically you can have a move tacked on there if you know you don't need the fire or the fighting necessarily for that week. Typically teams aren't weak to both fire and fighting, just how it goes, draft league. So yeah, and I mean with the Iron Fist boost, it's going to come in complement. The 108 speed stat, I'm sort of diversifying my speed tiers at that point. I have 121 with David Bird, I have 88 with Excadrill, possibly, I don't even know what the base stat would be if you calculate Sand Rush, but you get the premise that like I'm already trying to force Pokemon to be timid or jolly. So I spent a lot of money. Excadrill was 17 points, Tornadus T at the highest at 19, and Infernape at 15. So my next pick, I wanted to also like keep it on the higher end, and I realized with Rafiki and Greetings, they both doubled up on ground weaknesses. So if I'm gonna cover them the best, I might as well go double Genie. And unfortunately, I wanted Thundurus T, and it got sniped on the way in the 4th round. I was very upset about it. But for one more point, I get the other counterpart. Sure, it has a neutrality over a flat-out immunity to electric types, which I would have hoped to further protect Tornadus T. Overall, Thundurus, I mean, you can't go wrong with Thundurus in the 4th round, right? It's got Prankster, all the different types of Prankster moves. It has Eerie Impulse is a great addition, but Toxic, Thunder Wave, Taunt, Nasty Plot if I wanted to go for the setup, Bulk Up if I wanted to be physical, Defog if I wanted to make sure that to keep the hazards clean. Like, I have so many different utility options with the Prankster, and even if I want to be defensive, I still have a 115 attack and 125 special attack. So we're going with that Swiss Army knife category where I could be physical or special, and that's not something people typically like. Yeah, so, and I mean, gives me another knockoff user. It's just overall a Pokemon that I've never gotten to use before, so having it on my team is just the play, right? 5th overall, I grabbed Florges. I realized some of the fairy types were few and far between on the board, and if I didn't grab Florges, I was probably going to have to resort to something like Aromatisse or Gramble or something where I didn't want to double up on typings either. Like, I don't know. I could have grabbed like a Mega Diancie, but it just seemed that I was eating away at my point total, my point pool. So I figured with Florges at 12, it's a safe bet. Like, I think Sylveon might have been on the board, or Sylveon got sniped shortly after. Florges Erica, another Pokemon I know how to use. Just another defogger, so now I have hazard removal in 4 out of my 5 picks. Gives me a reliable, pivotal cleric Pokemon, and just a great complement overall to my utility Pokemon, right? I have someone that's like purely defensive. I could be max defense and be a defensive wall with my special bulk as well. So I don't necessarily need to be a special wall and a physical wall. It was just more or less, I have Florges. That's great. I already talked about Defog and the Cleric. I have Wish, so with the Regenerator with Tornadus, I can pivot. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention too about Rafiki and Blurple too, is that they, Volt Turn, which is really, really, again, momentum is key for this team, especially for Tornadus. So like, any chance I get to pivot, I'm gonna take it. There's not much else to be said about Erica. Just it hits hard without investing in a special attack, and it's a really great wall. And it's, yeah, know how to use it. Use it in the past. Look forward to using it again. Miltank is one that I haven't pulled out of the playbook since Generation 6, but I honestly think that it was necessary. My only fighting weakness that I had on the team was Excadrill. And at this point in the draft, I sort of knew where my team was going to develop and what Mega I wanted, and I realized that Miltank was going to be phenomenal in that asset. Spoilers, it's Mega Slowbro. But the abilities that Miltank provides with Thick Fat. So Thick Fat covers my ice weaknesses for Thundurus and Tornadus. Scrappy can hit the ghost types, which, I mean, I didn't really have a ghost problem at the moment. So we'll ignore that one. But Sap Sipper was the one thing that in my head stood out and said, okay, I have Thundurus, I have Tornadus, and I want Mega Slowbro. Those protect them from the grass hits coming their way, but like, I don't want to be switching in those Pokemon necessarily on ground hits or on grass hits. Like, I want to keep their health at its highest peak. And I thought, why have a resist when you can have immunity with Sap Sipper? And not to mention that Miltank can also heal bells, so it alleviates Erica's role to be a cleric for the team and be more of a, let's say I want to run like a Calm Mind set for Florges, or if I just wanted to be like flat out like 3 moves or like a Wish Protect type of set or Wish Toxic, like I have that availability now with Miltank. It alleviates Stealth Rock pressure from Excadrill and Infernape. Again, both of them are great rockers, but like when you have a Miltank, you typically have the coverage for it, because Miltank most of the time is only going to be running things like Body Press, like Body Slam, like Thunder Wave, Toxic, just sort of like the fickle things that Pokemon don't really want to be bothered with. Miltank does it incredibly well, and not to mention Milk Drink is very good recovery. So between Florges and Miltank, I figured like that's a good synergy. Like I can't beat that. After Miltank, I really had to think about what my next 4 picks were going to be, because I knew I wanted to make a Slowbro in the back. And at that point, I only had about 9 points, or I'm sorry, 13 points left for like 3 more picks after Mega Slowbro. So I had to think about where's my budget, what am I comfortable with, and what's going to benefit my team the most. And I realized that Smeargle was only 6 points, Picasso, and I've used it before. I've used some very intuitive sets. It's not just the classic Sticky Web, Stealth Rock, die first turn leads, right? I've run things like Final Gambit, I've run things like Extreme Speed with Endeavor, with a Focus Sash. Overall, like, we can't Smash Pass, or we can't, like, Belly Drum Baton Pass with Smeargle. This is a Dry Pass League, so unfortunately that's out, and that's probably why it's 6 points. But just the fact that I can do Spore, Sticky Webs, Stealth Rock, Spikes, T-Spikes, Rapid Spin, yeah, you name it. Like, it runs the gambit. You got King's Shield. We don't have Obstruct yet, but that might come. So just sort of thinking of the future with Smeargle here. After Smeargle, I decided to grab Dusknoir because I realized I didn't have a Ghost type, and I think Ghost types are pretty pivotal to a draft. I mean, it doesn't hurt or it doesn't necessarily hurt if you don't have a ghost type, but rather having something that could spin block is great. Dusknoir with the Frisk ability is a great lead. It's typically bulky enough to take whatever's coming its way. People can't necessarily stack hazards on it or start to set up on it because of the attack stat with base 100 in its new addition to Poltergeist. I think that people are going to be caught off guard by that. Overall, it's a Pokemon that I've drafted more than any of these Pokemon combined on my team. Like, I know Dusknoir, the ins and out of Dusknoir. I've had it probably in more of my drafts often than not in the past 6-7 years of draft league Pokemon. So it's one of those Pokemon where I knew I was comfortable with it, and at 4 points, to me, that was a total steal now that it has Poltergeist. When you look at some of the statusing options, like it has Haze, which is going to be pivotal. You'll see spoilers, but not spoilers, in the future. But it has Trick Room, it has Trick. I've definitely tricked off like Choice Scarfs and things like that to bulky Pokemon that want to come in and handle it. It gets Taunt, it gets Will-O-Wisp. Will-O-Wisp, great tech. Like anything that a Dusclops makes, anything that could make Dusclops annoying, Dusknoir just has that added benefit of I could run that one day, right? And those are the sort of Pokemon that I like on my team. Yeah, I'm not going to give up all my tricks with Dusknoir just quite yet, but I know that with its new additions, 4 points was a steal, and I can't wait to use it. Second to last, we have our good old Hippopotatoes, or Hippopotas. There's really no secret here. You can see I already started like building a spread for it, but yeah, it was a Sandstream user for 2 points. I figured if you're going to enable Excadrill for 2 points, like, yeah, sure, I'll just pick you up on the team. We need to draft between 9 and 11, so this rounds out my 9. And I had enough points left for Mega Slowbro at the very end. But Hippopotatoes itself does one thing, and it sets Sandstream. And I'm going to be like completely transparent there. If you see it in the team preview, and you also see Excadrill there, then you know what I'm doing, right? It gets some cool moves like Stealth Rocks and Toxic, but it also gets harder hitting moves. Whoops, sorry about that. Like I know it gets Earthquake, and I think it gets Slack Off, so like it could be really defensive with an Eviolite. I haven't ran most of the calcs on that, but I do know for 2 points, you turn Excadrill into a menace. Enough said there. My last Pokemon, of course, is Paul the Mega Slowbro for any Hayden fans back in the day. But Mega Slowbro has been on my radar for literally generations. Like I always wanted to use it in Generation 6 with Chansey or Cresselia, just like bulkier Pokemon. It has Shell Armor, which means that like if I set up and you don't have a way to Toxic me, like I'm pretty much gonna clear the rest of your team. It's just a good Pokemon with that 180 defense stat. Like I take knockoffs like a champ. Really any physical hit, even if it's super effective, like you have to be like pretty well established to like crunch through Mega Slowbro, which is always a good thing. And it got body press now, so that's like one of those, you know, without having to invest at all in its defenses, it could just hit anything that's not like a psychic type or a ghost type for really, really good damage. I know a lot of people don't like it because it has to hold the Slowbronite, but with Regenerator, I could still... This league is not a first turn Mega, so Slowbro can just regenerate pivot with Tornadus without being a Mega Slowbro, and then when I feel that like, hey, like I might want to like start setting up Calm Minds, or start running it with Counter or something, or realize that I need to start taking defensive hits a little better, like I can turn into Mega Slowbro. So we're gonna see, right? Yeah, no heavy duty boots, but it's still an overall good Pokemon, and that's my team. I still have 1 point left to spare if I want to do free agency in the future. You know, there's a lot of viable options of free agency after the grace period of the draft, so you know, I'm looking forward to using this team, but if I need to make adaptations, you know, offers and everything else on the table, much appreciated. So yeah, that's the Kingston Kecleons for the GPBAR Season 3. I'm looking forward to it. yeah, I'm now actually gonna cut over to a tier list maker that I curated just for this video, and I'm gonna go over each team. They're gonna pop up here on the left hand side, and I'm gonna, I don't know, just rank the teams based off of my opinion, my draft league opinion. Everyone's opinion varies, and some people might feel comfortable with some Pokemon, that's why they picked them. I'm not an analyst. I just know Pokemon. You know, I have a rough idea of how good these teams might be, but, you know, take everything with a grain of salt. If you don't like my opinion, then that's your prerogative. Okay, so as you can see by the disclaimer, I obviously lost audio in my last video. Sort of unfortunate, but that means I get to re-record this with hopefully a little less downtime. Doesn't make it like an hour-and-a-half video, which is, I guess, a little better. First things first, when I go into this tier maker, I want to say there's really not a bad team in this league. There are just some teams that are better than others. Obviously, this is my opinion. Everyone has their right to their own opinion. That's their prerogative, and I think that yeah, you know, just take this with a grain of salt. You know, we can agree to disagree. It's as simple as that. I'm also, when I go into this, I'm going to be grading by certain criteria. Some of the things I'm going to weight a little more than others is, does your team round out a full roster? Did you use your points effectively? Team type synergy. Are there some holes that necessarily you don't patch, right? You could have 5 Fire Weak Pokemon, but if you have 6 resistances, I'm not necessarily going to grade that as hard as a team that like might have 4 flying weaknesses and only 1 resistance or immunity to it, right? Like, if your team is susceptible to some type of spam, I'm going to grade that, you know, a little more harsher than others. And yeah, also, you know, this is just a video to have fun with. I'm not necessarily trying to harp on anyone in the league, and under no circumstance, at least, I'm not going to be grading a team based off of their coach. This is only going to be the team composition themselves. You could have the worst team and be the best coach in the league. That's just how it goes, right? So I'm not really going to be grading by that. I think that's getting a little too personal, a little too cutthroatish. It's not my cup of tea. And that let's talk about your issues tier. We'll get to it when we get to it, right? Again, let's just have some fun with this video. Overall, we already talked about my team for like what felt like 3 hours, so I'm not gonna really harp into it. I think my team is pretty good. I think it's gonna be a team that a lot of people are annoyed with on team prep. Overall, I do think I'm lacking some wall breakers, and some, you know, minor details that would not make it necessarily an S tier. So that's where I'm going to rank myself. Yeah. Next up, we have the Hoax Peak Deoxys, Josh. And by the way, you're going to see all the teams displayed to the left. Yeah. So, Hoax Peak Deoxys with Josh. As you can tell, he has a very, very, very type-oriented team. There's not really overlapping types to my knowledge, which is something that, you know, some coaches prefer not to do, so kudos to them. I think they use their points effectively. Some of the things that I think that would prevent this from being a team that I would necessarily just want to trade 1-for-1, right? I think that the Swalot is not really beneficial there. I think that you could probably invest those extra 2 points and get something better than a Raichu, something else in the 7 or 8s, or turn something like a Rhyperior into another mid-tier Pokemon that can probably do a little more than Rhyperior, right? Overall, I think this team is solid, yeah. I would say that I don't want to face you. I don't look forward to team prep. And good luck to you, Josh. Alright, next up we have Los Santos Sceptiles and Aaron. Right away, I'm going to put this into the still not excited to face you tier, right? You see that menacing core with a Celesteela, Clefable, Latios. Celesteela, Latios really protect the Lego. The only things that I would say are preventing this, or, you know, keeping this a little pigeon-held, is the fact that there's that Marowak. I don't see why you would necessarily need that Marowak if you have a Seismitoad. just, I don't know. I don't see the benefit of grabbing 2 points for Marowak unless you really want to use it. That's your prerogative, right? Yeah, so I think that, and also Sock at 6 points. I haven't seen Sock drafted in quite some time, so I don't really know what it could do that would warrant 6 points. I just don't think that it probably should be valued that way. I think if it was a 6-point Pokemon, that people would draft it a lot more often than not. And yeah, there's not really anything that could support that Mega Houndoom. Maybe someone with Sunny Day, like a Clefable or something else, maybe to go with Shaman with some Synthesis, but overall I just think that Mega Houndoom without the Sun just isn't the greatest Mega pick. So that's probably the reasons why I would rate it as an A or a B, right? But overall, you know, not looking forward to it. Next up, we have the Sao Paulo Ferrethorns V2, and I have to say this is probably the first team that I, you know, think overall it's a good team. I just instantly noticed some glaring holes that I don't see how they can patch without doing some free agency moves, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, everyone has an opportunity with their team to perform, and you know, I do have to say, going into this draft league is like 70% prep. You can have the best team, you can have the worst team. It doesn't matter. If you prep well and you execute your game plan, you're gonna win. That's just how draft league sort of goes, right? The more time you spend, the better odds you have of winning. It's just, you know, it's a game of analyzing and understanding your opponent. Simple as that. So with V2, one of the things I instantly noticed is there are a lot of ice weaknesses, and there are sort of some glaring ice weaknesses that like can't get patched well. Nidoking, obviously Tangrowth, Pinsir, and Noivern. Noivern, you know, dies to anything ice, physical or special. Mega Pinsir can probably take the hits, especially with the Intimidate beforehand. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's like Tangrowth doesn't want to take those, and Nidoqueen, you know, if it's rocking the Life Orb, it's not going to take Residual, obviously, because of Sheer Force, but it's still one of those Pokemon where, like, it doesn't want to be taking ice hits well. And the only two things the Sponge does is Rotom Heat and Suicune, which makes me believe that Rotom Heat and Suicune are necessities, and nearly every week it has to come in. And another thing that I kind of want to harp on to is the Galarian Lanoon and Machoke picks. Machoke for 2 points, I think, is, like, good value. But this team really looks like there's only 9 viable Pokemon. And when I say viable, Galarian Lanoon and Machoke don't add any support for other Pokemon on the team, right? They're not necessarily taking hits that other Pokemon wouldn't want to take. This team is naturally bulky, but it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't have really good team synergy. So when you're playing with a team of 9, you're instantly going to get knocked down a point because that's less prep, right? Like, I could tell you, this team, Galarian Lanoon and Machoke, will be covered just by prepping against the original 9, which is not really good synergy. Overall, though, I mean, Mew Nidoking is a very big hassle to deal with. Suicune, Tangrowth with a Regenerator, like with Blissey with Teleport. I think it's going to be a nightmare. Some good pivots, right? Suicune can be just an obnoxious Suicune, and if you let Mega Pinsir set up, then you lose. So there still is a lot that to be offered by this team. I just think that the holes that they have at the moment are sort of hard to recover by. Next up, we have Picton Piplups, Cumos, and I would have to say this is the first team that I would like to officially address. Cumos, if you're watching, man, or I don't mean to assume, but if you're watching, let's trade teams. Like 100%, I will trade 1-for-1. There's no trade restrictions. I think that'd be super funny, but overall, I love your team. Tapu Koko, Kyurem, Scizor is like a really good Fairy Dragon Steel core. And not to top it off, you have Double Fairy with Mega Gardevoir, which I'm always kind of a fan of just because of how limited the weaknesses are to Fairy. Typically, if you have like a dual typing, your other typing is going to offset what your fairy weaknesses are. I think that this team with 10 Pokemon utilized point structure very well. A lot of these Pokemon I think could be 1 or 2 points higher, right? I think Starmie is great value at 12, Archeops is great value at 6, Golurk at 6 with its new Poltergeist, and oh my god, it just got so much. It got Switcheroo, so you can run like a Trick Scarf Golurk or something, a good lead. Alolan Muck was dropped to point. It was one of those things that I disagreed with. And Chestnut, if there's not the right flying coverage, it could really just sit there for a long time. Yeah, I just think synergy-wise, like, you're not running into a lot of common weaknesses. And this team overall is really good. Really good. Seriously, let's trade. Next up, we have the Gliscor Ghouls, Carbonite, owner of the league. And because he's the owner of the league, let's talk about your issues. Seriously, I dislike this team. I'm just joking. I think it's a really good team. I think a lot of the adjustments that you made in free agency after your draft was pretty good as well. I love Entei being guarded by Grassy Terrain with Rillaboom. Same with Zeraora with Grassy Terrain Rillaboom. You got good pivot, right? You have Flip Turn with Vaporeon. You have Mega Pidgeot with U-Turn. You have Gardevoir with Teleport. Rillaboom with U-Turn. Zeraora Volt Switch, right? Like, so great pivoting right there. Hazard removal. You have Hitmontop, and you also have Mega Pidgeot. Mega Pidgeot can't run heavy duty boots, and I guess Togetic gets Defog. But like Hitmontop and Togetic are going to be like Pokemon that necessarily have to come every week. And Hitmontop is a great Pokemon at 8 points, but Togetic at 4, I just think that there could have been other Pokemon that fit that 4 better. You could probably invest, get rid of Togekick, and get rid of like Aggron. I don't necessarily think the Steel type is a necessity on this team. And get a 9-point Pokemon and make it a 10-mon roster, but you know, a lot of these Pokemon are very, very solid. You didn't invest high in your tiers, and I like a lot of the Pokemon on the team, so this might be my bias, so that's what I think of the team. I really like it. Next up, we have Adrian in the Miami Mimikyus, and I think this is probably the second team that I'm going to have to rate in the B, or in the C, sorry. I think your first 7 picks are frighteningly annoying together. Gliscor, Toxapex, Heatran, Mega Scissor, right? They all have like only 1 or 2 weaknesses, and they all really cover them well. Gliscor's only weakness to Ice is protected by Scissor, Toxapex, Heatran, and Mienshao can even like come in with the Regenerator and punish Ice types if it is Stab Ice. Same thing with Heatran, right? You have Mega Scissor, Gliscor, who just like don't really care about ground at all. And Psychic, which is also patched by Scissor Heatran, so Toxapex is further protected by that. I just think overall it's a good team. Reuniclus can be scary if it's the right set. Mienshao, it can be scary. I really wanted Mienshao myself, but then I ended up taking Infernape, and it sort of like changed up my plan a lot. Slurpuff with Sticky Web support to give Mega Scissor further sweeping potential, and to make Mienshao faster, so it didn't have to run a Scarf. It could be Bandit, it could be Life Orb. An endgame Mienshao cleaner can be scary. The thing that I rated this at a B is your last 3 picks with Alolan Persian, Carkol, and Tangela. I think, again, looking at this, you're not going to really see a lot of those Pokemon coming often. So it really just feels like this is like an 8 Pokemon roster. Like, Tangela, Carkol can be good, but your team doesn't really like knockoff spam to begin with. A lot of them rely on their items. Gliscor with Toxic Orb, Toxapex with Black Sludge for good residual recovery, Heatran with insert whatever item Heatran wants to run, right? Mienshao is solely dependent on its item. Reuniclus doesn't like the knockoff at all. Slurpuff, you know, doesn't get its Unburden boost if it gets hit. So having 2 Pokemon that would run Eviolite just doesn't make sense to me. Overall, though, I think you could probably bring your first 7 every single week and still have a phenomenal team. Yeah, you got the coverage, you got hazard removal, hazard settings, setup potential, sweeping potential. wall breaking potential with Heatran trapping potential. So yeah, it's a good team. I just think that you're really only playing with 7, maybe 8, and that hurts in the team prep side of things. Next up, we have Eternal Eiscue, coached by Detective Butters, and I have to say that this team, you know, if you want to hit me up and trade 1 for 1, I am totally okay with that. Seriously, this team is sort of weird in its own right, just because of how many ground immunities there are with Hydreigon, Corviknight, Moltres, Togekiss, Rotom-Mow, and then it just protects like Nidoqueen. It's not really a ground weak team. It almost like further prevents me from not wanting to run Pokemon with ground coverage, just because what is the ground going to give me? Half the time you're going to be immune to it, and half the time it's only going to hit for neutral. So unless I have good ground stab coverage, like that's not a necessity. And not to top it all off, all these immunities, right? Moltres, Togekiss, Corviknight, all 3 of them, the only common ground there is electric, which Hydreigon and Rotom-Mow cover up phenomenally, and they're still, again, ground immunities. It's just a weird synergy stacking like that. Personally, I've run triple flying myself and I love it, so like, you know, kudos to you. I think Glaceon at 2 points that has freeze dry is like one of those Pokemon that is phenomenal value for being an ice type. It is slow, but like if it's specs, right? It's 120, 125 special attack. I can't really remember, but like you can run specs Glaceon and just kind of break walls with people not expecting it at 2 points. Sharpedo is also good. It has flip turn now, so you really don't have to run protect if you don't want to. If you want to run the scarf set, or if you want to run life orb with the protect with 3 moves, you also have psychic veins, close combat. Good Pokemon overall, and I don't even need to talk about Mega Gallade. It's 19 points for a reason, right? It's one of the best Megas out there. It just gets better and better each generation. So, yeah, let's talk about our trades in the future. I would love that. No, seriously though, great team. Probably like I said I wasn't gonna rank teams, but if I had to say there was like a best team in the league, I would probably say it's you. As of right now. Next up, we have Pacific Purroins, coached by Luna, and I have to say this team overall is really, really good. I'm not looking forward to fighting it. It has some kind of weird synergy with the Triple Steel, but this is the first team where I think it has 11 Pokemon that are all extremely, extremely viable and have a lot of versatility, right? The Pokemon that only have 2 points or 3 points or 4 points, you're only going to see 1 or 2 sets, and you know what they're going to do pretty much when they come into the field. There's not much gimmick with them, but Scyther at 5 is one of those Pokemon where like it could do a lot. It could set up, it could be defensive with Eevee, it could be heavy duty boots, it could be choice scarf. So you got to watch out for that. But yeah, I would say the only thing holding it back is, you know, you have a lot of Pokemon that are weak to fire, and your only sponge for a fire hit is Volcanion, right? You have everything else. There's no immunity. Like, people can just sort of run fire spam, so a good fire type with a choice scarf like a Darmanitan just sort of comes into this team and clicks Flare Blitz 5 times, right? Like, there's not much that can stop it. But overall, I do really like the team, and I'm looking forward to playing you in the future. Next on the dock is Dublin Drifblim, coached by Liam, and I have to say this team is probably, it's still really good. It's still really good. What I love about it is Tapu Bulu with the Grassy Terrain at 15 points. I know it doesn't have Play Rough. I know it doesn't have Grassy Surge. Such a waste. Really such a waste. It could be such a better Pokemon if it had those. But I do think it has a lot of good viability, especially the Latios. Like, Tapu Bulu Latios is great synergy. Really, some of the things that like I want to touch base on here is the fact that, one, you have Volibee, which is sort of like a weird pick considering that you already have Crobat Obstagoon. Yeah, I don't really see why it's a necessity on the team for 2 points. You probably, again, could have done what Aaron done and dropped Volibee and picked up a better fighting type for 7 or 8 points over Girder. And you have a lot of ground weaknesses. I understand that you have the grassy terrain, but like if Bulu doesn't come, it's going to be hard to protect Stack Attack, Cramorant, Jolteon with Earthquakes. And if there's like special ground coverage, you're sort of in a pickle, right? Scolipede doesn't want to take the hits because Scolipede's not really that defensive to begin with. Mega Cramorant can take a ground hit, can take a water hit, but overall, like, you're just sort of, again, in that same instance where you're kind of susceptible to ground spam. You can threaten ground types, but if you did have the Baton Pass clause, I think this team would go straight to the S with Scolipede. But overall, I just think that there are some smaller details that would make this team just not as good as some of the other teams that we've already ranked, is all. Next up, we're looking at Jacobus, coached by the Dublin Dragapults. It's funny how two Dublin teams were back-to-back in the draft. And I have to say that this team is one that I am not looking forward to facing. Mega Charizard with Necrozma, Gengar, just some good sweepers overall. Really, this would be, in my opinion, an S tier just because of how bulky it is with the Avalugg, with like a lot of these Pokemon are Pokemon that in Generation 8 got better, not worse, right? Sylveon, Mystical Fire, P2, Teleport, Avalugg, Rapid Spin. I'm always a big fan of Cradily, and especially Electivire. Electivire can be deadly in the right hands. Also provides a good immunity for Milotic, making it a little more, harder to take out, right? But I just really don't think that a Alolan Dugtrio pick, I think you could have been better off going with a 10-man roster or a 10 Pokemon roster and getting something better than Claydol. I understand that it's a ground immunity to help things like Gengar and Charizard and Evire. Cradily, well, Cradily is neutral, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a really good team. Again, I would rank it an S. It's just that's that like tiny detail that I would change, as opposed to the teams that are in that Let's Trade, right? I just wouldn't really change anything. Like, I think they're good teams overall. Next up, we have the Long Island Lickitungs, coached by Oyster, and I have to say that it's a really, really strong team, but it has some weird niches about it. You only get to bring 6. And you have 9 to choose from, so people are only team prepping for 9. Regular Manetric's sort of weird because it's not Mega Manetric, so it can't get that Intimidate, right? It is an electric immunity, but that electric immunity is only protecting Slowking. So Spectrier, Mega Lopunny, Slowking, right? Like, that's a phenomenal team, but I just think that, like, you have this ice weakness with Salamence, Landy, who are both quad weak to it. And even superior in that, right? But your ice resistances just really aren't it. So a lot of teams can run ice coverage without being an ice type, and also cover the Pokemon that are going to switch in on the ice move. And yeah, you really only have 9 Pokemon, so those are like some of the gripes. But overall, like, I really, really like the Slowking, Mega Lopunny. They cover each other so well, and Landy, I've drafted it a few times now with or without Sheer Force, and it always comes in clutch. People forget how good of a Pokemon it can be without the Sheer Force. And Metagross as a weakness policy user, as a Stealth Rock setter, as Bullet Punch to handle your fairy types that, Mega Lopunny doesn't really want to take on. Galarian Weezing, same principle, right? I will note too that Galarian Weezing, unless Salamence gets Heal Bell, which I can't really remember, or Superior like that gets Heal Bell, maybe even Lopunny can, but like Galarian Weezing is really your only other cleric, so you have to sort of watch out for that. But overall, a good team, and if you play one wrong move against a Pokemon like Mega Lopunny or Spectrier, if they get up to sub, if they start setting up, like, it could be very dangerous. Next up, we have the FC Dallas Tauros, coached by Shrimp, and I have to say this is a pretty good team. I just think that it's one of those teams that it doesn't really make sense to me. I sort of understand some of the strategies that might be employed with or deployed with like the rest of the teams, but for now I just am not sort of seeing like what the game plan is for Shrimp. has a lot of like weird weaknesses and weird spots. I'm not really seeing the benefit of having a Alolan Sandslash outside of its like rapid spinning potential. Goes for like Orbeetle. I don't see anything outside of its sticky web potential. Like, there's a lot of Pokemon here that can run many different sets, like Cobalion, Volcarona, Dragonite, Tapu Fini. It's just like one of those, like the rest of them, I don't really know exactly what they want to do outside of support those Pokemon. I mean, only time will tell, and I think a lot of those Pokemon are cool. It's just one of those teams where I'm still sort of like struggling as to like where's the game plan here. You have Pokemon that can set up, that can sweep, that can do this and that, but they don't complement each other. That could just be me though. You know, maybe I'm overlooking something. Overall, you know, a good team, and I will, you know, say that I do like how you drafted 11 without really dipping very low in your point totals. Alolan Golem being the lowest Pokemon at 5, but again, Galvanize is a hell of an ability, so you know, you never know with that. I'm still sort of like confused by this team. That's all. I like it. I think it's strong. I think it's going to be annoying. I think it's going to be fun. But I think it's one of those, like, it probably tailors to the coach more than it does the team composition and synergy itself, and that could be even more deadly than the team itself most of the time. So yeah, Backstabbed Bisharp by Coach Dark Cyber, and this is a team where I'm also in the back half of it thinking, what are you kind of doing here, right? Como, Aegislash, Mega Diancie, phenomenal core. Umbreon, phenomenal defensive pick. Gastrodon, also a great pick. But then you get into some other Pokemon, and I'm starting to like wonder, it's like you have Houndoom, Turtonator, Alolan Marowak, and I get that they're all 3 different fire types that do 3 different things. I would think if you have Pokemon like Aegislash, Mega Diancie, where they have a ground weakness, you wouldn't want 3 other fire types being on the team, where none of them do resist ground. You have Vikavolt, which is a ground immunity, but I'm just not really seeing those last 3 picks. I think you could have spent, you know, 21 points in really rounding out this team strong. Same thing with Shermp and others using 11 Pokemon, and not really dipping super low is valuable. But overall, I also think that the Poliwrath is sort of an off pick when you have things like Pinsir and Gastrodon. They're probably going to do the same thing. Pinsir almost always has the fighting coverage, and you already have a Como O2. So it's one of those things where like you have like overlapping types that do sort of similar things in weird styles, but the original core itself just bolsters the team to a whole new level where I'm not really excited to face you. All right, 2 more teams left. We have the Kona Cramorants, coached by Rose, and this team is pretty good. It's pretty good. Not ready to face that Slowbro Garchomp. And also, I'm a little bit salty because you stole my Thunderous Tea. I was going to grab Thunderous Tea, and I got sniped in the 3rd round. Had to settle with Thunderous Eye. But, really, really good team. Really, really good team. Masquerain with Sticky Webs to support the rest of the team, like Garchomp and Chandelure. Scrafty is good. Lycanroc Dusk with Priority. Mr. Rhyme for, I don't know, hazard removing potential. So that way things like Thundurus don't have to do it. Slowbro with good pivot. Mega Audino as a staple cleric. So Slowbro Mega Audino is already like good in its own right. I like the team. I think some of the things that wouldn't make it necessarily an S tier would just be the fact that I think personally I have good answers to it, but I think the team comp itself is really solid. Is really good. Lastly, we have Seattle Seadras, coached by Shemp, and I have to say that this team is the worst team that I've seen in my draft league experience over 7 years. And I am also kidding. No, seriously, Seattle, arguably my biggest rival in draft league. Definitely my biggest rival in draft league. Has a really, really good team. Victini, Mamoswine together as wall breaking potential is absurd. There's not really a Pokemon in the game that can take on Victini and Mamoswine at the same time. And if it does, it has some big shoulders to play that week because it has to take hits from both Victini and Mamoswine, which is nuts. Rotom Wash is sort of the glue to the rest of this team. And I think that Zarude is one of those Pokemon where I initially probably would have ranked this team lower. But then Zarude is one of those pickups where I gained a newfound respect for it. It can be fast and defensive without investing in either its speed or defenses, which is ironic, right? It's a good Pokemon with great coverage. I wish it got knockoff, but it is what it is. Fortress, great. Hazard removing potential, sort of take the load off of Rotom Wash, or set all the hazards. You could do either or. Same thing with Aromatisse. I think Zarude Aromatisse is a good course. The Raptor, great wall breaking potential. Could be fast pivot. Reckless is scary, but also intimidate support for things to pivot into Mamoswine and Victini. Just make it very scary, very, very scary. I love Hariyama, so this might be a bias. I think Floatzel for 3 points is also absurd. I think Floatzel has good potential. Yeah, I think Floatzel is good. I think Cursula, I haven't seen it drafted yet, but I think it could provide great team synergy with things like Mamoswine, Zarude, who like are sort of weak to fighting. So, you know, having that immunity to switch into a spin blocker, things like that. I think this team overall is pretty solid. The one thing that I'm just like not a huge fan of is Mega Ampharos, right? It can't do things like Cloak Draco Meteor. It's very strong, but it doesn't have the speed stat. So unless it gets support from like Tailwind Staraptor or good pivots to a point where Mega Ampharos is just faster than the rest of the opponent's team, it's just not my necessarily personal favorite Mega, but I think overall it has a, you know, it creates that hidden Fairy Dragon Steel core. It's a budget with Fortress, Aromatisse, Mega Ampharos, and a hell of a Fire Water Grass core with Victini, Rotom Wash, Zarude. So you hit your cores, you did good, you have 11 Pokemon, overall a solid team. So that's really what I think about the league at the time. I really just only added that let's talk about your issues tier just for, you know, just a little bit of laughs if I wanted to joke about a team. But in all seriousness, I think the whole team is very scary. I think the whole league is very scary. I'm looking forward to playing all you guys. Yeah, it's going to be a long season, 15 weeks plus playoffs if hopefully we make it. But overall, yeah, I think it's going to be fun. Again, take this with a grain of salt. These are just my opinions. If you disagree, that's okay. You know, it happens. Everyone has their own opinion on Draft League. Everyone has their own opinion on Pokemon. So there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know it's a little bit of a longer one, but overall, you know, have a good day, and I'm, you know, looking forward to league to start. So yeah.